Hello, dreamer. I'll be your storyteller tonight. Like and subscribe for more bedtime stories and share in the comments where you're listening from. I should never have taken the night shift, but I needed the money. So when the hospital offered me a janitor's position, I said yes. I thought it would be easy. Empty halls, quiet nights, no one to bother me. I was wrong. The basement was always mine. My duty. The elevator groaned as it carried me down. Too far down. Every time those doors opened, I felt it. The cold. The weight. Like the walls had soaked up every scream, every death, every last breath that ended here. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, flickering like dying stars. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching, breathing. I told myself it was just bad wiring, just an old building, but I didn't believe myself. I pushed my mop along the long, empty corridor. Each step echoed back at me louder than it should have. Like someone was walking right behind me. The air reeked of bleach, but beneath it something else, rot, damp, the smell of something left to die. Then, a sound goes soft, hollow, drip, drip, drip. I froze. There was no leak down here, no pipes exposed. Still, I heard it, and then footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging, not mine. I spun around. The hall was empty. But when I looked down at my mop bucket, it wasn't empty anymore. The bucket had water in it, rippling, as if something was moving inside. I hadn't filled it. I hadn't touched it, but it was half full. That's when I heard it, a voice, female, low, right behind me. Don't clean here. I turned so fast the mop slipped from my hands, clattering against the tiles. Nothing, only shadows when I looked back at the bucket. The water wasn't clear anymore. It was red, thick, heavy. Blood. Bubbles rose to the surface, as if something inside it exhaled. My knees buckled. I stumbled back. The corridor seemed longer now, endless. The walls, closer, pressing in. The lights flickered. On, off, on, off. Every time the light came back, the bucket was closer, sliding across the tiles, leaving streaks of red behind it, and then, for just one flicker, I saw her, a nurse, standing at the far end of the hall. Face pale, mask hanging, her eyes black holes. Next flicker, she was gone. Only the bucket remained. I ran. My footsteps crashed against the walls, echoing, doubling, like someone was chasing me. I passed door after door, but when I turned back, they weren't there anymore. Only endless walls. The air grew thick, wet, heavy, and over my own ragged breathing, I heard hers, a drowning gasp. Wet. Ragged, right beside my ear. At last, the elevator. I slammed the button, praying. The doors opened with a groan and I threw myself inside, and I didn't care where it went. Anywhere but here, the doors closed. The elevator shook as it climbed, but the walls dripped. Dark streaks ran down the metal, dripping onto the floor. Drip, drip, drip. I backed into the corner, heart pounding. The elevator dinged. The door slid open and I was back. The basement, the same corridor, and waiting in front of me, the bucket. I don't remember how I got out. One moment I was trapped in that elevator. The next I was outside, running. The night air burned my lungs. I didn't stop until I reached home. I quit the next morning. Never went back, but it didn't stay there. The basement followed me. At night I hear it. That dripping sound, slow and heavy, in the dark. In the morning I find them. Wet footprints, trailing from my bathroom to my bed, and last night, The bucket, it was waiting at the foot of my bed, and this time, it wasn't empty. Don't take the night shift in the basement. Some stains will never wash away. They always told me the school was empty at night. They were wrong. Empty halls have echoes, and echoes can lie. I worked the overnight shift. Custodian. Night guy, the one everyone forgot. Lights off, doors locked. Clean the mess from the day. Lock up at dawn. At first it was just work. A mop. A cart, a checklist taped to the handle. The quiet was a blessing. You could think. You could breathe. Until the building started answering back. I walked those hallways every night, room to room. Lockers lined like teeth. Classrooms stacked like little tombs. The fluorescents hummed. The heating pipes clicked. The school smelled like dried chalk and old book glue. That night my checklist had one line I couldn't ignore. Room 12, set up chairs. Clean the floor. Dust the shelves. I tried to skip it. I always did. Third floor gave me the chills. Older classrooms. Smaller windows. The heat never reached it. But the event coordinator called. The chairs had to be ready in the morning. So I took the long route, trying to forget why I hated that corridor. I told myself it was just superstition. Old buildings play tricks. I pushed the cart down the third floor hallway. The lights dimmed as I passed. A shadow seemed to slide out from behind a locker and vanish before I reached it. 30 feet from room 12, a door creaked. Slow, enough to stop me mid-step. The door should have been closed. I had locked it earlier. The square window in the door was black. Not the usual dull gray of empty rooms, but absolute black, like someone had swallowed the light. I told myself to keep moving. But something made me walk toward it. Not curiosity, compulsion. A small, stubborn tug in my chest. I reached the door. The handle was cool. When I pushed, it gave with a whisper. Inside, darkness folded like cloth. The PTA boxes, old poster tubes, and a stack of desks. The room smelled of dust and pennies. I shone my light through the classroom. The beam cut through the dark and landed on the desks. Dozens of wooden desks lined neat like teeth. I froze. Every desk had names carved into the top. Little letters, desperate and uneven. 100 names. 100 small hands that had once held pencils there, and carved over and over on desk after desk my name, not once, not twice, everywhere. My name, over and over, scratched into the grain like someone wanted me to read it again and again. Then the laughter started. Not the playful noise of kids goofing off. Not the high giggle of something harmless. This was something lower, ragged, mocking. Close enough to feel like breath on my neck. It came from the back of the room. From under desks, from inside the walls. I told myself it was a recording, a prank, that someone had snuck in. But every exit was locked. The building was secured. I checked my radio, no signal. No one was on the cameras. The laugh multiplied. One voice, then two, then dozens. Layered, woven. A chorus with the wrong cadence. It sounded like they were lining up syllables to poke me. My throat closed. I took a step back and the laughter stopped. Like someone had pressed a mute switch. The silence hit me like a hand. I tried to leave. My feet wouldn't move. Something small brushed my ankle. Cold. Sticky. Like a wet leaf. I looked down. A small hand. Pale. Pressed to the underside of the desk. Little fingers curling and uncurling. Not crawling across the floor. Not visible from the top. Just pressed to the wood as if reaching through. Then another hand. Then dozens. They slid out from under the desks like shadows shedding skin. Fingers wrapped around my ankles, climbing. cold breath on my shoe. A grip that tightened with a patient intelligence. My legs buckled. I dropped the cart. The clang echoed through the classroom like a gunshot. "Let go," I told them. My voice trembled. "Let me go." They tightened. Cold as pond water. Small, strong, precise. They pulled. Panic is an electric thing. It makes your limbs obey sudden orders. I shoved, I kicked, I crawled. My knee hit the desk. The wood bit into skin. I tasted iron. I crawled out from under the desks, hands scrabbling at the tile. The classroom was a half-moon of light now. The ceiling fan whirred, throwing long blades across the desks like knives. When the light stuttered back, I was alone. The hands were gone. No marks, no blood, only the wood where they had been pressed, warmed by my frantic palm, but etched into the floorboards just beneath the teacher's desk. Someone had carved 3 small words. "You never left." I told myself it was a trick. A fellow custodian with a cruel sense of humor. A student who broke in. Anything. I called dispatch. My supervisor came in 20 minutes. He walked the room. He checked the lockers. He told me the building logs showed no entry. Security footage showed only dark frames with the timestamp stuttering. He said, "Old houses remember. Don't let it get to you." He didn't look at the desks. He didn't look at the floor. He left with a shrug that had pity in it, and a silence I could hear as clearly as any laugh. That night, I didn't go home right away. I stood in the hallway and listened until morning light crept in under the classroom doors. I told myself I would forget it. I told myself I'd imagined the hands, but memory has teeth. It chews on the soft parts of you and leaves patterns. A week passed. I told myself I'd never go back to that floor alone. I worked early shifts. I asked coworkers to cover 3rd floor. I thought distance would be the antiseptic against what I'd felt. Distance doesn't cure something that chooses you. One night, the event coordinator called again. A parent meeting. They needed the chairs. I was the only one left on duty. Overnight staff were thin. I gave in, I took the key. I climbed the stairs. The air on the 3rd floor was colder than it had any right to be. My breath fogged in the beam of my flashlight. The door to room 12 was half open. The classroom was dark. The desks waited like a congregation. On the front desk, under the flicker of my small light, was a single paper cup. A child's juice cup, sticky red on the rim. On the cup, with a small childish hand, someone had written a name. Not mine. Not at first, then I looked. Carving in the top of the desk nearest the door. New letters, raw and bleeding wood. My name again. Only this time it wasn't scratched. It was shaping itself. Each letter warm to the touch as if just carved by wet nails. I tried to back away. The laugh started low, like the building exhaling. Slow. Complicit. Familiar. The hands came again, not from under the desks this time, but from the edges of the door frame. From the vents. From the chalk tray. Fingers that fit the grooves of my shoes perfectly. They reached for my face, my wrists, the collar of my uniform. I could feel the weight of small palms pressing against my chest. They were not blind. They looked at me with the certainty of a thing that has waited. I remember thinking, if they pull me under the desks, nobody will notice right away. They'll chalk it up to a missing vagrant. But the part of me that has a pulse had other planned. I screamed, something I haven't done in a long time. The sound ricocheted down the corridor and came back smaller, sicker. The lights above me flashed white, then died. The room took on the color of iron. Then, I hit the stairs. 2 at a time, clumsy, my cart abandoned. I ran until my chest threatened to split. I quit. That was what I told everyone. I gave back my key. I packed my rags in a bag and walked out into a clean morning that didn't belong to me. For a while I was free. I rented a room 2 towns over. I changed my shifts. I moved my sleep schedule. I left the school behind like a bad dream, but the message didn't stop. 3 nights later, I woke with the sound of fingernails on wood. A slow, deliberate scratching above my bed. I sat up. On the inside of my bedroom door, carved into the paint were tiny impressions, rows of small letters scraped shallow into the wood. My name, repeated. I thought I was going to vomit. I thought that would be the end. That the carved letters were the last of it. I threw the mattress outside. I burned scraps of the door. I moved apartments. It followed. Last week I came home early. Rain had been falling and the street smelled like wet asphalt and cigarette smoke. I closed the door behind me and went to the sink to wash my hands. There, on the bottom of my shoe stuck to the rubber, were splinters of floor, oak, pale and waxed. I knelt down and brushed them off onto my palm. They were the same grain as the floors in room 12, same polish, same tiny knot in the wood. When I stood, my bedroom light cast a long shadow across the floor. At the foot of my bed, something sat waiting for me. A desk chair. A small wooden desk, child-size, placed squarely in the center of the room. On the desk's surface, carved deep enough to catch light, was a name, my name. Over and over. Older letters and newer, overlapping like the growth rings of a tree. Under the desk, stuck to the underside of the wood, were small handprints, inked in something dark that smelled faintly of rust. I reached out with one shaking hand to touch the underside. There was a warmth there, as if someone had been sleeping just below the floorboards and had pressed their palms up through wood to say hello. They said all together, like a chorus folded into one small mouth. "We kept your name for you." I stepped back. The room tilted. Rain whispered at the window. My throat closed. The final thing I heard before I blacked out was a childish, satisfied little laugh, the same one that had been in room 12. When I woke up, it was morning. There was a small scrap of paper on my chest, a sloppy drawing, a row of desks, a stick figure at the front, and in shaky letters across the top, "You never left, Akao. I don't know if I ever left." Sometimes when I stare at my hands now, I can still see the faint ridges of little fingers in my palms, like impressions burned into skin. If you ever walk into an empty classroom and find your name carved into the wood, don't try to leave. Don't run, sit down. They'll need a place to write. The mall was never meant to be silent. In the daytime, it was alive with chatter, footsteps, music, and the ringing of cash registers. But at night, it transformed. The fluorescent lights dimmed to a pale, sickly glow. The escalator stopped moving. The fountains that once sparkled with dancing water now sat still, their pools murky and black. Every sound became magnified. The creak of a ceiling panel, the hum of an old vending machine, even the faint scurrying of rats behind the walls. And in that silence, only one man walked the halls, Harold Turner, the janitor, or as everyone called him, the Night Man. For 15 years, Harold had worked the night shift at Westbrook Mall. While everyone else went home to their families, Harold stayed behind, pushing his mop bucket through the endless corridors, polishing glass doors and sweeping the food court long after the fryers had gone cold. Most people didn't know his face. Fewer even remembered his name. But those who worked the day shift whispered about him. "He's been here longer than anyone," they'd say. "He knows this mall like the back of his hand." Sometimes, I think he knows it too well. That particular night, Harold was scrubbing the tiles outside a closed clothing store. His mop made a wet slapping sound, echoing unnaturally against the walls. He paused, wiped his brow, and glanced down the corridor. That's when he heard it. A laugh, high-pitched, childlike. He froze, mop still dripping. The sound came again, bouncing off the walls. But there were no children, not at 2 a.m. Slowly, Harold pushed his bucket forward, the wheels squeaking as he followed the sound. His footsteps squelched on the wet tiles. His breath grew heavy. At the end of the hall, he saw something strange. Wet footprints, small, bare. Leading away from him, curving around the corner. His chest tightened. He whispered to himself, "Not again, please." Not tonight. Harold followed the footprints, his heart pounding. They led past shuttered storefronts, their glass reflecting distorted shapes in the dim light. Some reflections didn't move when he did. He tried to ignore it. He had learned over the years that reacting only made things worse. Still, the air felt heavier with every step. As he turned the corner, the footprints vanished. In their place was a puddle of water, fresh, glistening. He bent down, touched it. Ice cold. The laugh came again, this time behind him. He spun around, but the hallway was empty. "Leave me alone," he whispered. His voice cracked. He pushed his bucket faster, heading toward his storage room, his one safe place in the entire mall. The door creaked as he opened it. Inside were his mops, brooms, and shelves stacked with cleaning supplies. But tonight, something was different. His mop was lying on the floor. His bucket was half empty, and on the wall, smeared in something dark, were words scrawled in a child's hand. "We are still here." Harold staggered back, his breath ragged. He knew this was no prank. He had seen it before, over and over again, because Harold knew the truth. He had been there the night it all began. 15 years ago, before the mall had even opened, there had been an accident. Construction workers were digging out the foundations when an elevator shaft collapsed. 3 men fell 6 stories into the pit. Their bodies were never recovered. The site manager insisted they had been pulled out, but the workers whispered otherwise. Some swore they heard the screams echoing from the pit for hours. Others said the cement was poured too quickly, burying them alive. Harold was young then, just another cleaner trying to make a living. He had been sweeping near the site that night. He heard the collapse. He heard the cries. And he saw something no one else did. The shadows moving inside the pit, twisted shapes clawing upward. Faces pressed against the concrete, mouths open in silent screams. From that night on, the mall was never normal. Lights flickered even after electricians replaced the wiring. Stores closed suddenly, owners complaining of nightmares and strange accidents. People went missing, shoppers, security guards, even a delivery man who never made it back to his truck. And always it was Harold who found the signs first. The bloody smears on the bathroom tiles, the echoes of footsteps when the mall was empty, the laughter of children who weren't there. But Harold wasn't just a witness. He had become something else. The shadows spoke to him. They demanded something. They wanted to be fed. 15 years ago, before the mall had even opened, there had been an accident. Construction workers were digging out the foundations when an elevator shaft collapsed. 3 men fell 6 stories into the pit. Their bodies were never recovered. The site manager insisted they had been pulled out, but the workers whispered otherwise. Some swore they heard the screams echoing from the pit for hours. Others said the cement was poured too quickly, burying them alive. Harold was young then, just another cleaner trying to make a living. He had been sweeping near the site that night. He heard the collapse. He heard the cries. And he saw something no one else did. The shadows moving inside the pit, twisted shapes clawing upward, faces pressed against the concrete, mouths open in silent screams. From that night on, the mall was never normal. Lights flickered even after electricians replaced the wiring. Stores closed suddenly, owners complaining of nightmares and strange accidents. People went missing, shoppers, security guards, even a delivery man who never made it back to his truck. And always it was Harold who found the signs first. The bloody smears on the bathroom tiles, the echoes of footsteps when the mall was empty, the laughter of children who weren't there. But Harold wasn't just a witness. He had become something else. The shadows spoke to him. They demanded something. They wanted to be fed. They came out like smoke, dark, writhing shapes, human yet not. Their eyes glowed faintly, hollow sockets filled with pale fire. Their mouths stretched too wide, whispering in unison, "You promised." Harold fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I gave you what you wanted. I kept you fed, please." Not me, but the shadows swarmed him. Cold fingers gripped his arms, his face, his chest. They dragged him into the darkness of the cabinet, his screams muffled as the door slammed shut. Silence returned. The next morning, when the mall opened, everything looked normal. The lights were bright. The halls were clean. The fountains bubbled cheerfully, but Harold was gone. His mop and bucket stood in the corridor, abandoned. The floor beneath them was still wet, too wet. The water wasn't clear, it was red. Shoppers walked past, unaware. Employees whispered about the janitor who never showed up again. Some said he quit without warning. Others said he simply disappeared, but those who stay late, who walk the halls after midnight, they still hear it. The squeak of a mop bucket rolling down the corridor. The slap of a wet mop on the tiles, and if you listen closely, you can hear him whisper, faint but desperate, "Run, before they find you too."